So far, we've learned a lot about the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. It's an inverted delta, one of a kind. It is fed by 5 major rivers, which are controlled by 17 major dams, which is backed up by a system of reservoirs with dams as well.
While living along the delta can be peaceful and restful, there are times of high water and winds when there is danger of a chance of levee breaks. Between the floods of 1982 through 1997, coordination between levee maintaining agencies and public safety agencies improved. After the 1997 floods, a series of California Office Emergency Services guides were issued identifying recommendations to prepare for future floods. They have and continue to make a difference. These guides include topics of communications, including alerts and warning, pre-positioning emergency supplies, evacuation of people, property, and animals, mobile home planning in floodplains, and numerous levee and floodplain mitigation standards.
The Delta is more than upstream communities and those living and visiting the Delta. Downstream communities are affected as well. Waters flowing through the Delta return to a single flow just east of the Carquinez Strait, entering the San Francisco Bay. Upstream high water and flooding have an impact here also.
Right now, we're currently with a lot of excess water here in the Delta. A lot of hazards of navigation have broken free from the rising waters. A lot of debris in the water, and then there's also some aids to navigation that are almost completely submerged and not usable. Well, we look for any kind of debris that's out floating that could create a hazard to navigation. Reports of trees and floating boats, they come into the Coast Guard quite frequently, and we work with other government agencies to either secure those boats or get them removed from the Delta to eliminate basically the hazard to navigation. Our biggest concern at the station currently is any kind of distress from from the rising water levels. Additionally, the Coast Guard does want to keep up the flow of commerce as uninterrupted as possible. If you are traveling in the area of the Delta and you do see something that you consider to be an emergency, notification itself is the biggest key. Whether that is to your local sheriff's office or local police department, or simply calling 911, or looking up the nearest Coast Guard unit. We all work hand in hand. We work with the sheriff's office and other government agencies daily to ensure safety in the Delta. So any notification and that word will spread, and we will get the correct assets out to assist as soon as possible.
Private nonprofit organizations such as the Red Cross, Salvation Army, local food banks, and even animal rescue agencies are coming together to work closer with government agencies to alleviate the impact of future floods.
Critical to the future of the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta are maintenance and improvements to the infrastructure.
The work that's taken place since really the early 80s, had that not been done, the Delta as we know it today would likely not be anything close to what it is. But fortunately, after an event that occurred really in 1980 and particularly in 83, the federal government said, you need to help yourself. You need to mitigate the damages that are occurring on your property. We're not here to bail you out. And if you don't, we're not coming back. And they gave us that edict, and it was the most important edict this region could have ever seen, because it put the state and the locals in a position where they knew that if they wanted to have Big Brother help them in the event of a natural disaster, major natural disaster, they had to help themselves. And they weren't doing that. They were not doing that. That's when the inspection routines got to a daily perspective. That's where the engineers were hired to come in and start designing levee systems to withstand the forces of a higher water event, and for that matter, a natural condition, just general tides were causing levee failures to occur. And what we did is we strengthened by flattening the landside slope, spreading out that fill. Think about a pile of dirt. The flatter it is, the more stable it is, and raising it. And then adding toe berms, which are basically a blanket of material at the toe. Now the important part of that is these levees want to fail in a landward manner because there's the forces on the water cause what looks like a landslide. They call them slip circles. These slip circles fail the weakness of the soil, the resisting forces give, and that material slides out. Well, if you do that with a pile of dirt that's holding back water, guess what happens? The water comes through it. So by putting a toe berm at the bottom, which is a blanket of material 3 to 6 feet tall, you minimize that. Furthermore, that material has two other effects. It's there in the event that levee were to settle, and during a flood you can reach down there and grab it and help fill your levee back. That's an immediate source of borrow. And then third, it keeps what's called lateral spreading down. Remember I talked about the toothpaste? So when you have sand underneath the levee, and that's water's in there, and you shake it, it liquefies. You know what happens when you put sand on the beach and there's water in it and you shake your bucket, it all pours out. Same thing happens if that sand connects to the water into the land. There's an open face. Well, we've now captured the land. We put a blanket of material over that. So the levee won't spread landward. It may still spread waterward, but now I've got a pile of dirt there. So even though we're not purposely going out and doing seismic improvements, we effectively are keeping the lateral spread down on one side, and we're moving our levees landward. We can't work waterward. That's from a resource perspective and a fishery perspective and environmental perspective, we can't really touch that. The key element to all of this is we do all-weather roads. Either they're paved if it's on a county system, or they've got 6 inches of gravel on a rural system. Because if you can't get there, you're done. I mean, the major flood events that we've had, the basis of success has been we've been able to get trucks and people and resources to the flood because we've had good all-weather road access.
The Department of Water Resources did a study of the Delta and specifically looked at strategic locations to place flood fight materials where we could access all parts of the Delta with these materials regardless of what type of limitations on trucking or boating in order to get the material out to where it needs to go. So we chose 3 specific locations. We have a depot in Stockton and Rio Vista, and we're working on a site at Brannan Island.
It's interesting. The districts that have flooded in the past usually have their own supply materials on site. Districts that haven't flooded, they may buy a pallet of sandbags, but they won't maintain it. And you know, 5 years down the road, the rats have chewed it up, and so they may not have it. And I think San Joaquin County in your office, when you were there, was paramount in pre-deploying supplies or having them available when they were needed, and it's become an invaluable resource. 2017 event, we used a lot of supplies out of the county stores, and I think they had to be replaced on the fly. It was a huge resource. It was critically important and provided a huge benefit. Developing this out where each district has its own supply container that they maintain, but you know, it's provided through a grant funding program or something. Especially given the locations of a lot of these districts, they're out in rural areas. A bridge may be out. You know, access may be limited due to various reasons. And one island can flood that has a road that gets to your island. So having those materials available, you know, the sandbags, the visqueen, the shovels, the stakes, the twine, all those components, you pop the lid on a container and you're ready to go, and it will hold you until other resources can be brought in, either airdropped or trucked in, or you know, you bring in major contracting equipment. But you can hold a flood back. I've seen many times where with a pallet of sandbags and 4 rolls of visqueen, we've held places that probably wouldn't have lasted, you know, another 2 hours. We've held them for 24 to 48 hours while we got the balance of the resources in to actually address a problem. So it's critically important.
The materials in the flood fight container, they contain about 1 mile's worth of flood fighting materials, and it's just enough to let the LMA get started on the work that needs to be done, and it gives us just enough time to deploy additional materials and have them get there before what they have runs out. The materials belong to the Department of Water Resources, and here at the Flood Operations Center, it's our primary job to support local agencies and counties in flood fighting. We look at the local maintaining agencies as the first responders to any flooding event, and so they will utilize their resources and materials first. When those have been exhausted, then they will come to us for the additional supplies. And so the materials that we have stockpiled are really available to counties who request them when needed. One unique element to the site in Stockton is a permanently installed waterside conveyance that's available to be used 24 hours a day. Behind me, you'll see 2 waterside conveyors. We're able to pull barges up alongside and load the rock material onto these barges. This gives us another dynamic in getting flood fight materials to where they need to be in a timely manner. These conveyors can load about 1,000 tons of material an hour. That's about 24,000 tons per day.
We are here in the Traffic Management Center, which is live. We've got all the radio stations here. We've got cameras of each freeways we have here. So a lot of times if there's a hazard or an accident or just the public calling in something, it comes straight in here to the TMC department. And once it gets here, the employees here, they distribute it to what area the hazard or the call goes to. We'll set up traffic control with signs, detour signs, CMS boards. They're put up to pretty much let them know what is closed. Like when they go through I-5 to the Grapevine, they see the sign that says the Grapevine's closed due to whatever condition that they got going on up there. Overhead sign, radio stations. We've also got Caltrans social media, which is Quick Maps. Quick Maps is, we use that a lot, and it's got a lot of important information, phone numbers, data, to contact, who to contact, what's closed, what's open, all the hazards on their areas. We also got Facebook. We've got Twitter. We normally get prepared for the storm, so we'll make sure we send a crews out to make sure that the culverts are free from any debris, the drains are cleaned. We do have vectors that it's kind of like a suction pump that will suck out debris from some drains. Number one is the safety of the traveling public. We want to make sure that we don't open any roadway if it's unsafe.
The National Weather Service is working together with the California Department of Water Resources, the USGS, the National Water Center, the Bay Area communities, and Sonoma County Water Agency. We're working together on building a model that takes the tidal influence from the bay, the storm waters from the rivers coming into the Delta, and the storm surge to develop a model to better forecast in the Delta.
It's a project that we're really excited about in Yolo. We're pushing it even farther this next coming year, but all the maps were standardized from Butte all the way through the south of San Joaquin. All of the symbols that are being used on the maps, what should be on the maps, was all standardized between all of those counties. And originally the goal was to have a map that you could roll out on the hood of your car while you're working side by side with Public Works or the levee maintaining agency. No matter who's out there in the field, they all could see everything right on that paper map. This year, we're actually pushing it a step farther. We're contracting with an outside vendor, basically to take all of the data, put it into a newer format that we can look at in emergency operations centers and share between counties over county boundaries. So even though my data is only for Yolo, if I get the other counties to agree to share their data with me and I share mine with them, then digitally we can span up and down the Sacramento River, see where the water's flowing, because it doesn't just stop at an invisible county boundary. It's just really useful for the community in the Delta to understand what their emergency management agency already has in place. If your emergency management agency is reaching out to you, trying to educate you on things that are around you, either a hazard, an evacuation plan, what you should be doing on your own. Those are things we really need everybody to listen to, follow our advice. We're getting ready to do a huge push throughout all of Yolo County in 2019 about a brand new evacuation plan. So we're really hoping everybody latches onto that information, takes it, uses it to their benefit. It's coming with a whole host of videos, apps, all kinds of stuff, and it works hand in hand with all this flood mapping. It actually started from the flood mapping. We got some of the data in that project and we expanded it and took it throughout the entire county. 2019 is the year of preparedness and mitigation. So those are the things that emergency managers throughout the state of California are kind of going to be reaching out as much as possible. How to prepare yourself, how to make sure that you have everything you need if we ask you to evacuate. I know that we're talking more about levee systems and floods, but along that with that goes possible evacuations or possible even shelter in place if you're surrounded and you can't get out. So those are kind of some of the messages you're going to be seeing from more emergency managers in 2019.
Traditional warning methods that are continuing and being valid today include the emergency alert system. That's that tone alarm on your TV or radio when a warning goes out for your area. And in addition to that, all of the Weather Service products and our warnings go out on NOAA Weather Radio. We play a continual weather cycle, but when the warnings come on, we tone alarm so that radio will turn on and you will know that something impactful is happening in your area.
In order to maintain this estuary in the present state, and particularly the value of this estuary, we need the resource people in there. The fishery, the terrestrial, the trees, the bugs, the birds, the bunnies, the bushes, that kind of stuff. And it's becoming a more arduous task because there's more people in California, and they pay closer attention to the environment than probably any other state in the Union.
We hope you found this 4-part video series informative.
We hope you view the links provided in the introduction.
And if you did enjoy it, please support Soundings Magazine. Thank you.